A civic movement grounded in the Constitution. Patriotism explained. Not right, not left, but straight ahead.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Patriot Party, where truth, transparency, and constitutional principles come before politics. The Patriot Party movement is focused on re-empowering we the people, restoring accountability, and putting America first through honest conversations and real solutions. America first, not America only, because we lead by example.
Today's conversation focuses on system, trust, accountability, and what it actually looks like to try to step outside of the traditional political structure. Joining me today is Lewis Herms, a California gubernatorial candidate running as an independent, positioning himself as a voice for voters who feel disconnected for both major parties. Lewis has built his campaign around themes of government accountability, auditing state systems, reducing waste, and re-engaging non-voters while also focusing on issues like affordability, senior protection, and trafficking. He's currently traveling across California, meeting directly with voters, building a grassroots campaign centered on restoring trust and activating people who stepped away from the political process. Lewis, I want to jump right in because a lot of what you're talking about resonates with people across the country right now. Frustration with systems, loss of trust, and feeling like they've been cut out of the process. You're not a career politician. You're stepping into outside of what you normally do. What was the moment where the frustration turned into action for you?
Well, it's been like that for a while, but during COVID itself, I was my wife and I were watching a lot of videos. I've kind of been a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist for several years, and we were watching some videos, and there were some things that we saw, and there we go, okay, this is resonating with us regarding kind of the control mechanism. But what I found is that it seemed like a lot of the films that were out there were kind of speaking to the echo chamber. And I figured I asked myself, how on earth can we get to the people that are not on the same page? Because that's who we really have to wake up. And then I ended up doing a film called 2020 Vision, which brought in perspectives of what was considered conspiracy theories in the past, like the Gulf of Tonkin, the Tuskegee experiment, MK Ultra, things like that. And I said, okay, now that we know that they're fact, is it possible that there's things that we're calling conspiracy today are actually fact? And that's how I tied this film together, and it got a lot of attention. And then I did a couple other films after that, then did the Truth Tour to go around. I asked God, I said, what should I be doing? He said, tour the country, wake people up. That's what we did. And then when it came to this gubernatorial run, I really wanted to support a candidate. I really didn't want to jump in the race, to be frank. And I said, okay, so let me look and see who's talking about a few things that are very passionate to me. Is anybody talking about child sex slavery? No, nobody was talking about that. Is anybody talking about the medical mafia? Nobody was talking about that. How about the parasites that are controlling everything? Nobody's talking about that. I go, wow, this is crazy. And I predicted a long time ago that the waste, the abuse, the redundancy, the fraud, in fact, I named it WARF in California, are over 75%. And back then, nobody was talking about that. So I said, okay, God, what am I going to do? And I knew that it was going to be go do another documentary, tour the state. But crazy enough, that's not the answer I got. It was like, you're running for governor. Okay. So here I am today as the anti-politician, as I've been named, running for governor. And I'm okay with that. And I'm so okay with that, we put it right on our bus, the anti-politician.
It's a good hook. It's a good hook. So let me ask you, when you say the system is broken in California, what are the top 2 or 3 failures you believe are driving that?
Well, I think there's a massive election fraud, frankly, which brought us into this case in the first place. Because if the elections were true and real throughout the United States, I don't think we'd even be having a conversation today. But the manipulation's been going on well over 4 decades from the evidence that we have. So if that alone was fixed, it'd take a long time, but everything would end up repairing itself. So I believe that's the number one challenge in California is fixing the elections now, or repairing them because they're already fixed, if you know what I mean. So, but if we look at what I call WARF, the waste, the abuse, the redundancy, and the fraud, it's at 75%. Can you imagine we go in there, we do a full forensic audit, let's call it a super doge, right? We go in there, we super doge California's budget. Now we can reduce that same, probably at least 50%, if not the whole 75. Suddenly it fixes all the problems. You don't have property tax, you don't have income tax.
So are you familiar with our movement, like what we're doing, this trilogy of a nonprofit, the American Institute for Civic Leadership, the Patriot Party, which is the conversation you're on right now, and then Civic Truth Media Group, which is building technology, AI-assisted tools, civic tools to re-empower the people. We're building tools where we're working with municipalities where we can take complex legislation and break it down into simple, understandable language that creates no friction. We do clarity portals. We can also scan legislation and tell you what's worked over the years and what hasn't, so the lawmakers can go back and figure out how to make it better. Because one of the things that I really think, and it may be pie in the sky, but you talk about balancing the budget. So this AI, it allows us, now we teach in the school, we teach responsible AI. Everybody hears AI and they say, oh, no, there's two humans in the loop, but you at least have to have a human in the loop. The human comes up with the idea, the AI enhances it, then the human or humans decide if it's government. So the AI is just enhancing it. And so we've built like a federal policy producer we're using for competitions where you can take data points or an idea or a problem and it spits out Washington formatted ready legislation that's built off of data, not donors. So like we got proof of concept on our page. We've done 10 of them, how to fix healthcare and save the American people $2 trillion. We've run all the stress tests. I just got back from DC. It's actually being passed around there. We've done how to fix gun violence constitutionally without violating the Second Amendment, first in history. It's all on our page. So we're using that as a learning tool and an education tool for middle school and high schools, and we're giving it to the American people. But the thing is that AI is so good at taking out human emotion and not muddying the waters when human emotion muddies the waters and pointing out just the facts. And so we're using technology to try to shine a light on the government and see why everything's done. And we can actually shine a light on elections with it. I mean, they're taking AI and they're breaking down the electoral maps like down to like 1 or 2 votes. I mean, accuracy. They're crazy doing stuff right now. Technology is the way to rein in power. You rein in power with power.
I completely agree. You're actually speaking my language. So in full authenticity, a couple of years ago, I was railing against AI. Watch out, AI is going to take over the world. Be careful. I was talking that language. And then I had a come to Jesus moment. I said, wait a second. If we just complain about it and do nothing, it will take over the world. I said, what we need to do is get as many benevolent people in there with the human element to make sure that we can use it for good. So you're
oh my gosh,
on the right page here. This is phenomenal.
I've got to pull up something right now for you and the listeners. We actually just launched this. It's going viral right now, and it goes right into the systems that you're talking about. Because in order to really do it, we have to change it at a systemic level. The incentives right now are geared towards clickbait. They're geared towards manipulation. They're not geared towards truth, transparency, the things that we're pushing. So let's see here. We're gonna pull this up.
I even think they're programming woke ideology into AI now.
There we go. All right. So here the I don't know if you can see that, but and it's kind of busy. All right, here this is a good one. It's simple. So we kind of put out, when Microsoft and Meta started doing these big layoffs because of AI, if we keep optimizing systems, people become the inefficiency. It's not the technology, it's the system design. That's what it is. So, we're putting out a whole thing right now, and it's not these, but the ones we started with, they got about 500,000 views between them. They're going pretty decent right now. But yeah, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take politicians that are willing to change, because the status quo, you're going to get pushback. People like to be entrenched. They get treated like rock stars. Back in the day, George Washington, they'd leave the farm, go to DC, make the country better, go back to the farm. Nobody wants to go back to the farm anymore. So,
Well, because
anyway,
because
let's get back
money
to your
money
interview.
has
I'm sitting here going
become.
off on my stuff. Uh,
No, I love this conversation. I would prefer a conversation over an interview any day, anyways, Matt. And I'm actually loving what you're saying because I one of the things that I talk about a lot is getting the attorneys out of the political realm, and this seems to help to do that. I also talk about no more 100-page bills; they need to be 2 or 3-page bills, so people can have a yes or no vote, an up or a down vote, so we know exactly what's going on. So this is right up my alley. I love
Yeah,
it.
can you imagine? I want you to just picture this, right? So this is teacher led right now. Civics teachers are pushing this before we've taken the first donation. They're piloting this before we've even taken $1 donation. They're behind this 100%. So can you imagine with the federal policy producer, we do a competition at the end of the year, middle and high school. Each one gets a scholarship, so there's 100 across the country for the best policies. You got civics educators, you got parents, teachers, all working together to try to solve some of America's biggest issues. And then on the flip side of that, the American people, you got this guy who works a job, a good job, a blue collar job at a factory, but he's got a great idea because he's living an experience. He can plug that in and get Washington formatted legislation built. Not only is it built on data points, but we have it programmed so it's built on hindsight. So it looks at all the mistakes and why things have failed, and it builds it not to fail on those same mistakes. So
That's
this
beautiful.
guy, it levels the
I
playing
think
field
if
with
we
this guy and all these people that's got 10 years worth of training and
it
all these
does.
people, you know?
I love it. I love it. In fact, I'd love to just program an AI to think like the founding fathers, and I think we'd be okay.
You need to look on the page. I had a modern conversation with the founding fathers. I programmed AI to have the conversation on what we're doing, these 3 things, and what the founding fathers would think. And it pushed back with what it's on our page. Modern conversation
Wow.
with the founding fathers or something. Yeah, it's on our page.
I will. This is exciting. I love it.
Yeah, check it out, man. I'm telling you, it's I just got back from DC. That's on X2. I documented. I kept emailing the legislators, wanting to let them know, hey, we got this going on. We got this. Couldn't get any traction. I said, you know what? I'm going. Right after I got back from my honeymoon, I said, I'm going. I've never been to DC, and people were messaging because I documented it all. I documented everything. It's on X. Like I had over 1 million people viewing it, and they're like, "Oh, you can't do that." I'm like, "Watch me." So I, mapped it in, went through like the TSA stuff, and these offices, man, they talk about the halls of Congress. It's a Lambert's in there. But I went in every one, and
It
talked to people and got direct emails and everything. I've been talking with them. But the thing is, what average American person could do that? They can't. I mean, I'm a dad, a regular guy, but I was able to do that. But what average American could go do that and say, well, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to Washington and you're going to listen to me.
No, I think it's fantastic, and this is what my campaign's all about. It's about we the people, us taking our country back. In fact, I've said for a long time, the micro will fix the macro. We always think about top down, and it really should be bottom up legislation, which means us. We should be the legislators, not these people trying to call the shots.
Yeah, I mean, I believe at some point we need to figure out the ambiguity in Article 5 and call a state-led constitutional convention, to be quite honest with you, and get some of these either
100%.
limited or not. I think limited would be the best, but that'll be between the constitutional lawyers. But it needs to be called at some point, and we need to get stuff on there that won't get voted on because there's certain things that just won't get talked about.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I believe there's a movement heading in that direction. Your timing is probably perfect.
And the thing is that it wasn't even meant. This started as a podcast for Truth and Constitution. Well, I lost my live stream on YouTube during the censorship era. I was reporting stuff, and I cited the sources, the Surgeon General, whatever. I mean, I had videos of the Senate chamber. It was misinformation. I lost my channel. Had tens of thousands, watching my live stream and everything. I said, well, that's not going to happen again. I'm going to make a podcast. So I made the podcast, started reporting. I reported on 2 polls at the end of last year, or towards the middle to the end, maybe September. It was in the same week. One said more than 3 in 10 Americans believe it's going to take violence to get us back on track politically. The second said less than 1 in 5 Americans know the 3 branches of government. So I tested it, but I tested it on doctors and people with their masters and doctors. They knew 2, they didn't know 3. I said, so this isn't about minority, this isn't about income. This is a failure. This is missing. We have to put this back in here. And that's when I started building all this stuff. Like the software, I built it to make our legislation for our flagship legislation, which was for a constitutional quality control board. How to map it out? I don't know anything about legislation, so I built it and researched it. And then I'm like, well, I had a guest on there that had the data points to fix Obamacare. We had him on for Fixing America, a series that we did. And so we plugged it in on the series, and live time produced, how to fix Obamacare. And then I started contacting the politicians, and I was like, well, we need to give this to the people. And it just kind of built from there.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. You're doing exactly what. See, here it is right here. I don't know if you can see this.
And see, we the people,
It's
yeah.
like you have
Well,
on your wall.
I see
That's
it.
it.
I see it. That's the name of
that's
our trip. It was the We the People trip. On every documentary, I'm like, there was a huge line out of the building. I'm like, man, I was waiting in the wrong line, but you know what? I'm gonna wait in line for We the People trip. I go wait in line. But yeah, that was the We the People trip. To let them know, hey, we're here. Special interest groups have had that representation. Why shouldn't we the people on stuff that's built just to benefit we the people, on data, not donors, like specifically on what will benefit the American people, on numbers and not manipulated numbers, correct numbers. But my thing is, Elon Musk, he's got his AI. They are accurately predicting markets, like all markets, like stock markets. And if you can do that with that many variables, then you can balance our budget and give us options so our politicians can figure out what's going wrong, and they can okay, this didn't work, and these are some fixes. We'll combine this one, and make the best solution. We could literally balance the budget with AI.
Well, yeah, we can. The first thing we need to do is completely do a forensic audit on the budget, and then add the AI on to balance the budget. Because what I believe it would do, even in the United States, that it would do in California, is we get rid of 75% of all that crap. Now your budget's not only balanced, you give the people back their money. So you're running efficiency. So I think it's brilliant. In fact, you and I should talk offline, because I think there's some things that we could work on together, because this is right up my alley on some of the things that I'm describing. And I'll take every assist I can get to get it right.
Oh, absolutely, man. We do a lot on, now we are not political. So, if we want to endorse a candidate, when you can endorse us, we want to endorse candidates because we're nonpartisan. We have to draw that line. But we'll absolutely, anything that can help, jointly, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you should stay nonpartisan. In fact,
Well, we have to.
I'm
That's the only
nonpartisan,
way.
and I'm a so-called politician.
We teach both versions of the Constitution, but the living and the originalists, they start to do debates. Each side gets given one, see what resonates best with them in middle school. That way they can start to form an informed opinion. There's media literacy in the curriculum, so they can start to form an informed opinion. Because the thing is, a lot of people try to get them in college. That's too late. They've already formed an opinion that's been skewered. We have to get them in middle school so they know how to form a true opinion on facts. And so we can reintroduce civil discourse back into society. Look, it's falling down. And look at what our politicians do. I mean, they break down and talking about eyelashes and stuff and screaming at one another. I mean, and they're supposed to lead by example. So I mean, no wonder what's going on. We need a complete overhaul. And that's why we say this is a nonviolent generational realignment and reset. That's what we're shooting for, a nonviolent generational reset. And I'm trying to build it so, it's not just with me. I'm building everything so I know it's not going to end with me. I just want something so we pass it on to the next generation. Well, I'm building it with internal checks and balances, separation of powers, everything. So it literally functions to keep us in line with what's best for the American people.
I love it. And as long as the human element's in it, it's exactly what we need. I think it's absolutely brilliant, because currently we're under a captured operation anyways. And because both parties get paid off. All the people, I mean, not all of them, but most of the people in Congress are paid off or compromised, either or, which means that nobody you see is really leading anyways. They're being puppeteered by somebody else. The brilliance about your system is that would prevent that. And I mean, the reality is, you went through getting your accounts eliminated. I can relate. I had, between YouTube and TikTok and X, got all those accounts taken down multiple times. But combined, they had over 250,000 followers. That's
Wow.
a big hit for somebody. But why? Just because I was telling the truth. God forbid you're telling the truth. And that's what they're afraid of, because I believe what I'm doing and what you're doing and what other people are really starting to work on really hard now, even Elon is breaking down the matrix that we've been in for a long time, which will actually expose all the evil doings. But what happens is, when we do that, is we're going to have a form of a reset to recalibrate, and that's where we're going to be going soon. Not soon enough, but soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think some good stuff's in store. I really do. I see, we're turning 250. I think it's timely. Everything that's happening is kind of really time. I think the American people that they won't, they're tired of talking. I mean, we won't even have people on the show anymore if they want to come on and criticize something, if they don't at least have the framework for a solution, because endless criticism is just talking in circles. That's part of the problem. I mean, we want to be part of the solutions, not part of the problems, you know?
Well, you're right. In fact, one of the big, huge part of my platform, which is fascinating, is over the years when I've done the Truth Tours, which was completely nonpartisan, right, discovering and waking people up, I've found out that about 85% about what Democrats and Republicans believe, they align on. Think about that. They align 85% of the time, but what are we always talking about? They're always complaining and fighting about the 15%, because when
But
they
that's the media.
divide,
Don't you think that's
they
because of the media?
Well, yeah, it's the media, and it's the construct, all the way back to Plato explained this about the way you control a society is by an illusion of choice and dividing and conquer. That's exactly what they've been doing. Our founding fathers were completely against the two-party system, but what do we live in today? We live in a two-party system. So it's a big scam.
Well, I always compare us, the longest lasting republic thus far is Rome, and they lasted approximately 1,250 years, which is right around 5 times what we are right now. And two of the major factors that caused their collapse was political corruption and media misinformation. What was mainstream media back then? Propaganda mills, rumor mills, all that stuff. So that's why, as soon as we finish scaling this software, we're finishing the internal build right now, that we already own all the technology. We're launching a fast streaming news network called Truth Matters News, and it's going to be fact-based, nonpartisan, everything through a constitutional lens. Now, we may have debates with living versus originalists, but people, we want the facts. I want to give the facts, and people want the facts. They're thirsty for that. They're tired of this everything.
Yeah, they are. In fact, I say that we're in the age of authenticity right now, and it's beautiful.
I think it will be. I do. A lot of people want to be doom and gloom. I had a guest on not too long ago, and they're like, the world's on fire right now. And I'm like, let me ask you something. If we had the same social construct back in the Crusades or Spanish Inquisitions or Native American, almost extinction, or cowboy days, what do you think social media would look like? The world would be on fire. The world is not on fire. We just have so much information, we can't process it all. I mean, that's why we have, at our home, we have smart time, free time. We have family time. We don't do smartphones on family time.
Yeah, even so, our youngest kid is 22. We have 7 children, right? And
Oh,
it's so
wow.
funny because when we go out to dinner, my wife immediately is like, "Phones down, off the table. We're not playing that game." And even our tough Marine black belt in his 30s is like, "Yes, mom, you got."
It's funny you say that. Our daughter, she just turned 12. She's been training combat sports for 4 years. She wants to be a UFC fighter. Now, she's a girly girl. Everybody thinks she's in cheer. She's like, nah, I'll fight. She does jujitsu, wrestling, boxing. Trains 5 days a week to be a UFC fighter. But yeah,
Wow,
I used to have black belt. It made me think about her.
that's
So,
awesome.
so let me ask you. Let me pick out. We don't have to go through this interview, but there were some good questions on here. Um, Let me get a. Okay. So I'm guessing when you talk about audit, you're you're not just, are you talking about budgets, agencies, programs, contracts, or are you saying a full audit?
Oh, full forensic audit, A
Okay.
to Z. If there's waste, if there's abuse, if there's redundancy and it's fraud, it needs to go, because that's stealing of the people's money.
So who conducts that audit, and how do you ensure it's independent and not political?
Yeah, well, we'll bring a full team in, an independent team with parameters, and then we'll have oversight for
What
sure.
if you did? What if you did
It
this? What
never.
if you did this? What if you did this? What if you incorporated this? What if it? What if? What if the AI? What if there was an AI and a human in the loop? Like the AI compiled the information. There was humans and AI in the loop. So there was a way, and I'd have to research it to see what the flow would have to be. But there was a way to make it where it wasn't. There was a way to ensure it where it wasn't going to be political. Like maybe it was fact checked by
No, I think
something that's maybe it's fact checked by AI. All the facts are run through and it says, yes, everything's factual. And it gives it, because you can't make, if you instruct, or if your AI is programmed, you instruct it to do a certain thing, you can't make it lie or go outside that, those parameters. So you can set
right,
guardrails
right.
and parameters that won't allow it to be manipulated. So it could be the independent body. You could have your team, and then that could go through and flag anything, and then that would have to go back to the team, and then that would show that before it went to, before it actually was enacted, hey, this is not, that's how we make sure our legislation is nonpartisan. It will not spit out partisan legislation. It won't. If it's going to go one way or another.
I think it's brilliant, because what we need is an unbiased eye at checking all this stuff. So I would not have any issue with that whatsoever. I would definitely have human eyes to make sure
Oh,
that it's
absolutely.
running appropriately, but 100%, that's something I would consider. Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, that would be a cool way. I mean, there's so many possibilities. I mean, I start my days at 2:30, and I tell everybody that's my time to create. When the girls are asleep, from 2:30 to about 6, that's when I'm creating. That's my creative time, and I'm coming up with all this stuff. But there's just so many things that it's countless, it's endless what we can do with this technology. If we use it responsibly. But that's why education is so important, because the next generation, we have to get it right for the next generation. They have to get it right, because if they don't, it can be catastrophic.
Well, I'm glad you said responsible too, because if we use it responsibly, that's how it could use to our advantage. And it's always about checks and balances. So we can have the AI do the work, and we the people can check on it to make sure it's doing it appropriate. It's unbiased. It's not going in the wrong direction. And I think what's happened is many people want to separate humans from AI, and many people want to abandon AI altogether. And I think the reality is meshing them together. We're not going to get rid of it, so we need to work with it and use it to our advantage.
And use it to innovate, because what'll happen is, okay, inevitably, when you're doing this, there's going to be some things that can be replaced, because one person can do 10 people's jobs. There's going to be something they can work 10 times faster. I mean, students are learning 10 times faster. The AI, it'll be pulled into our curriculum in 2 years, but as an assistant. But Peter Thell's using it in his school in Austin, and they're done at lunch, and they're all scoring almost perfect on all tests, and they're done at lunch. And I'm like, well, that's not cool. If the private kids can have it, why can't the public schools? And that's what we're working towards. Right. But yeah, it's imperative that we get this right. So I want to ask you this. This is a little bit of a touchy, sensitive topic. I have written about it before. So you've been vocal about ending child sex trafficking. What are the specific policy actions you would implement at the state level?
Yeah, so we're already working on that. We've been working with teams for a while, but on the state level, the first thing we do is we would implement a sheriff symposium where we're bringing in the 58 sheriffs together, and we want to retrain them on the Constitution, exactly how the Constitution works, what the parameters of their job is, because they have a lot more power to do something than they do currently. We also want to let them know they're supported. We're going to bring the CHP in to work on that as well. And then we already have apparatuses and AI systems that can target pedophiles, and we're going to use those, which are not currently being used right now, to go after pedophiles and go after these networks. So it's interesting that we would have this conversation, because I've not talked about the machine human element in going after child sex trafficking and pedophiles, but it's something that we're already looking at.
It's interesting you said that, because I had a really cool guest on. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's got a big podcast, The Fifth Phase or something. He came on not too long ago, and he started a company that's AI gun detection for schools. But there's a human in the loop. So instead of just getting all these alerts, the human sees whatever the AI catches, and then if you get an alert, it's from a human, so it's something to worry about. And they've detected 500 guns that the human eye couldn't see. Man, that's cool. We're gonna be able to use, as long as there's a human in the loop, we're gonna be able to use that technology to get the pedophiles out. We're gonna be able to do some great stuff with it. I don't think, that's why I say we should not be scared of it. We should embrace it responsibly. We have to do it responsibly. That's what it is.
Absolutely agree with you.
Cool. I love what you're talking about right here. So, you said, the sheriffs, you're doing the sheriff thing. So what role, so you think that's the role the state should play? So what role should they play versus the federal, and where are the gaps at right now?
Oh, Lord, the gaps are all over the place. Here's one of the reasons why there's so many gaps is there's a lot of corruption within the system. And the system is set up currently where activist judges and activist police captains, so on and so forth, get in the way of prosecuting bad people. Let's just put it that way. So what happens is we've had cases that go through, and the next thing you know, an activist judge throws it out. So then we start investigating the judge, and we find a sullied background, and then people come in to protect him. So this is why I go back to fixing the elections and having a free and fair electoral system, because these are bad people, and they're not all appointed. I mean, yes, there are NGOs involved and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, it's the human element that's the problem right now in regards to the cover-ups and the protections of these sickos that are trading and raping our children.
Yeah. And that's why you said something about the judges. That's why we initially came up with the Constitutional Quality Control Board when we were creating stuff, was because we say that these overly ambiguous laws, they breed bureaucratic overreach and judicial activism, and we were seeing that in the news every week. You'd have, and I'm not speaking on political. I'm just saying you'd have Trump push the Constitution. You have the judges, whether they should or shouldn't, whether it was back and forth, and they were Xing each other out. And that's another one of the things where hindsight, we can look back now, see the legislators, they have left laws and put laws on the books that are intentionally vague to leave leeway, but then you have the judicial branch making the laws. And no, you have to, and that's what our Constitutional Quality Control Board was all about, having the legislation go through and having a board, and it would just be advisory, but everything will be transparent. I mean, there'd have to be a constitutional amendment to give it any powers, but the legislative branch has the power to get to manage themselves and put that in an act where it has to go through that, and they can make their findings public, and then they can decide to or not take it up. But if they don't take it up and the law is unconstitutional, they're going to have to explain it to the American people, because the American people don't know a lot of stuff. I mean, that's a big reason our criminal justice system is so broken, because of how vague these laws are. I mean, they don't have to follow the Constitution because of how vague they are.
No, it's intentional too, Matt. And so what happens is our legislative branch has been eroded on purpose for several decades. I can just give you one that thankfully was overturned, is the Chevron deference decision was recently overturned in 2024 by SCOTUS. And that was a 40-year-old law that literally took the power away from legislators to put out fines and gave it to NGOs, so NGOs could start creating fines and fees and everything they wanted against we the people. That whole system's been completely eroded, and I believe intentionally they create vague interface with inside the laws so they don't have to be held accountable, but they can just keep their job, they keep making money, and now these activist judges just rape us. And
that's why it's imperative that we shine a light on it. Light's the best disinfectant. And if the American people know and they can connect the dots and make the decisions, then they know that's and you know what? I don't care who you are. You may secretly push back, but in the light, you're going to have a hard time pushing against transparency, truth, and the Constitution. I have a hard time believing you're going to be able to justify that to anyone. Not when you're an elected official.
Well, from a scientific standpoint, darkness doesn't exist when there's light. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like so. I'm going to tell you. So I didn't even realize that 5 trillion or 3 trillion of the 5 trillion that's spent on healthcare is for the third party system. It's red tape. It's billing. So if you get a cash price to the doctor, it's normally 60% or so less than the insurance price because they don't have to put it through the insurance, right? So it's simpler. So all we did was make it where so you can figure out how much each American, unless there's a chronic illness or a catastrophic something happens, catastrophe happens, you can figure out average how much each American, has. So we did state-run HSA accounts where the high interest in it rolls over. So hey, if you stay healthy, you get wealthy. I mean, that's a real Maha movement, and it shrinks the 3 trillion to 1 trillion for catastrophic and chronic, but it lets the American people deal directly with their HSA and their provider. So they decide, and we have a free market again. So it would actually initially save 2 trillion, but it probably would have a residual effect as well on a free market. And we've run all the stress tests. There's nothing like it. And it's on our website.
Yeah, and you know what you could even add to it. So one of the challenges you have in the insurance industries right now is it's called coded. So they have codes, and you have to apply everything to a code. What's lacking on the three big insurance companies is alternative codes. And what that means is if somebody wants to go to a naturopath, somebody wants to have frequency healing, somebody wants to take supplements, so on and so forth. There's actually an insurance company that I'm working with right now that has recoded it to take that, and they found that it costs 50% less, and people seem to be about 50 to 60% more healthy when they could use alternatives. So when you're working on this, and you and I can work offline, there's a way to add the codes in so people have more choice, and they actually seem to be healthier when they want things like that.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you something else. You said you want to activate the non-voting population. Why do you think they've disengaged?
I think they're disenchanted. I mean, the reality is right now what we're watching is there's not an appetite for the Democrats, and people are completely feel like they've been lied to by the Republicans. I don't think you need to be a nonpartisan to figure out the obvious right now, right? So what happens is we are watching the most important election that you can have as a primary, but we have been psyoped and convinced that the general election is most important. Let me prove right now why the primary is so important. And this has nothing to do with me. I've been saying this for years. What happens is let's just assume that there's some crazy globalist cabal that running things. I know I put my tinfoil hat on for that. But let's assume that's what the makeup of things. What happens is that crazy globalist cabal spends all their money and their time getting a rhino in office through the primary, a Republican name only, because they already believe they have the Democrat compromise. Therefore, they focus on the Republican they can compromise. So imagine they push really hard to get those two through the primary. In the general election, they're sitting back and having champagne because either one of the people that get elected
They've hedged
is
their
a
bet.
win for them.
They've hedged their bet.
Exactly. So we have to focus on the primaries. And I can tell you in California, our primaries, we're lucky if 30% come out. That means 30% of the registered voter, just not 30% of people over 18. 30.
So I had the legal strategist Chad Peace for the Independent Party on a few months ago, and something that he was talking about was the fact that you cannot participate in a primary unless you're registered with one of the two parties. Is that correct? I mean, I haven't looked into it, but you can't vote in a primary unless you're voting Democrat or Republican. Unless you are registered one of the two.
In many states, that's exactly right. Not in California. We have what's called a jungle primary, which people are upset about. But jungle primary is kind of a free for all,
That's what it should be.
and which I actually like because I think people should have a chance. But what they do is there's this political machine that they still won't even mention an independent on purpose because it breaks down the machine if they do. Ironically, the independents, non-political parties in California represent 30% of the vote. but they're completely ignored by the political machine and the mainstream media, because that's exactly what the founding fathers would want you to focus on. Thomas Jefferson, of all people, said if if it was between going to heaven or choosing a political party, he would not go to heaven. He says, I'm not choosing a political party. So he knew what was up. This is a complete psyop that we've been under for several years. That's why when you say the words nonpartisan, it rings such a beautiful bell, because that's exactly where we should be. It should be about people, policy, not party.
Absolutely. We got a graphic that's doing well right now. It says let's see, hold on. We put out so many graphics. One party, let's see, one people, one government, we the people. That's what it says. There's so many graphics we've done. It's one people, one government, we the people. I think it may have a little, but that's the gist of it. And you're right. We have to stop being so polarized. Something that really struck a chord with me. I'm in Louisiana, which is a very conservative state. It's a red state, and I went out in California to see my daughter last year, and she's her and her husband, he's stationed outside of San Francisco in the Air Force, and she's an artist, and I went and helped her set up at some art festivals. And they're very liberal artists, and we were talking about the Patriot Party and the Constitution and our curriculum and this and that, and they were all for it, and they were like, man, media has it all wrong. We just want to agree to disagree on some stuff. And I'm like, what? That's what I've been screaming. And that's why I say the media has things spun too and polarized so much. I didn't even realize, and this is kind of sickening, I didn't even realize that until I was interviewing somebody 6 or 8 months ago, that the media, that the people that film this stuff, they clip out. They don't sell the whole film or the whole piece. They clip out depending on which way that clip spins, which way it looks like what network wants that version and that version, but it's the same clip. It's just little pieces. And I'm like, that's misinformation.
Oh, it is, and it's actually deeper than that. So years ago, we used to have journalists, right? Now, who we think are journalists on TV, they actually don't sign a journalistic contract. They sign an entertainment contract, as if they're actors, because they really are. I even did a film called "Psyop of Silence," which was about fake news conservatives, not just fake news, but fake news conservatives, because we're living under this illusion that everything we're seeing is real, and it's complete and utter theater across the board, and so they can puppet. To give you an idea, there's a very large station here in Los Angeles called KTLA Channel 5, and they interviewed me. But because I didn't resonate with them, they never even played the interview.
So it's it's funny that you say that, because here's another, I sound like a broken record, but with Truth Matters News, we actually have this built and put aside for when we launch this. So we can take news stories and put them in, and the AI reframes them and fact checks everything on Truth Matters News format, truth, Constitution, everything through that lens. So it takes out the manipulation of the story, and everything is on those guardrails. So that news story is fact checked and reported on those guardrails, and then we get what those guardrails spit out. So we're not going to give the public something false. We're making sure that we're not going to give the public something false. And we're going to work with podcasters. Huh?
I wish I would have had this years ago. I had a program called Screw Big Gov News and Views, where myself and my partner did exactly that, but we had to do the work. Your tool would have helped us tremendously.
Well, also what we're going to do is we're going to offer the platform. See, we have an acquisition engine like no other built for, it's a very complex multi-layer media marketing funnel. It's more of an acquisition. And so we're going to, immediately have millions of viewers the way that we have it. So we're going to let independent creators, podcasters, as long as their format lines up with what we're doing, and as long as their reporting lines up with it, we're going to let them add that exposure, and we'll get some free stories as well. So we're going to help the podcasting world as well with it.
Brilliant.
So anyway, let me ask you this. So we were talking about activation of the voters. So what do you think the activation actually looks like beyond just messaging? How do you turn that into sustained participation?
Well, it really is just messaging in most cases and education. So
That's good.
um, I've been going up and down the state. We have a beautiful bus that we drive around, and it says the anti-politician on the side, and we the people, and people just walk up to it all the time. What does that mean? But go to rallies and a bunch of events, and it really is education. And there's a bunch of aha moments when we're explaining what we're explaining, because I also understand why voters aren't coming out. They feel in their gut that the system's manipulated. They don't feel like their voice matters. It doesn't matter who they vote for. They seem to be turning their back on we the people. So I get where they're coming from. So re-educating them that there is another way, but we have to do exactly the opposite. More people need to come out, not less people. And every time we get upset, we should activate too, instead of retracting into our basement. So that's part of our messaging, and it seems to really be working, because people are getting a lot more active and vocal. And frankly, I won't say the name on your program, but there's a certain network where a very, very popular guy tells his viewers, conservatives do not protest or boycott. Well, that is a control mechanism. That shouldn't be exactly the opposite. You should be, if you believe in what you're talking about, you should be the loudest voice in the room. You absolutely should boycott a business that doesn't have your values, and you should protest. So that is a manipulation. It's actually, I'll go this far. That's a CIA construct that's been used for
Seems
several,
like
several
reverse
years.
reverse psychology to me. It seems like
It is.
reverse
It is
psychology.
exactly that. And
Um,
it's been used for a long, long time. So we call out things and people like that when they're trying to manipulate the public. And before we go on, I want to just say something. So I'll go as far as the churches, and sometimes they don't know what they don't know. But there's a great passage in the Bible, Matthew 5, called "The meek shall inherit the earth." Well, we have been convinced over the years that the meek means weak and docile. If you go back to the origins, and this is what I do in all my documentaries, you go back to the origins of the word, which you'll be able to do in AI in 2 seconds now. You go back to the origins of meek, and it explains that it was actually strength, patience, and strength, and a voice. Moses was called meek all the time, and he walked through the desert for 40 years. The dude was not the meek that we've been sold at. Jesus called himself meek, and he flipped over tables. Why am I bringing this story up? Because if people realize that the manipulation even goes inside your churches, right? If just the Christians alone, if you want to talk about just the Christians, which by the way should be one of the largest voting blocks, but they have the lowest registered voters percentage wise. If they understood that Meek said, stand up for those that are weak and speak out loud, suddenly the manipulation would stop, and they would be a force to be reckoned with.
so let me ask you this. If someone replaces the people but keeps the same system, does anything actually change?
If somebody, let's say, replaces it, no, the system is broken. The system is completely busted and destroyed. Now, if we say the system, as the founding fathers, the Constitution, has been written before it was manipulated in 1871, well, I'd say likely that can be good, but we would have to adhere to those principles and also adapt to what modern times are at the same time.
Okay, absolutely. So let me ask you this. For someone watching this who feels disconnected and frustrated, what is one practical step they can take to re-engage in a meaningful way? Oh, I know what you're going to give me two. I know what you're going to say as one. Give me two practical
Well,
steps.
frankly, I would say the first thing they should do is go into a school board meeting and make a difference. Have their voice be heard. Say we're not going to put up your BS. Maybe we don't want pornographic material in our schools. Let your voice be heard, and then go out and tell two people to do the same, and have those two people do the same. Because I've learned a long time ago, mathematically, if 1 out of 1,000 people stand up with inside your community, we take everything back. 1 out of 1,000. The problem is we don't even have 1 in 10,000 standing up making a difference.
This is true. This is true. That's why we need a civic revival. That's why this is timely, because we need a civic revival. But in order to have that, we have to re-engage. We have to mend that bridge between us and our politicians, and we have to make people excited again and make them feel like they can make a difference. And I feel like the easiest way in is like a competition like that with their children. With the children, we're not using the children; we're helping the children and empowering the children. But that's going to also bring in the parents as well. Is what I believe.
Well, actually, if you think about it, the children have been leading for a long time, and often in the wrong way, because they're so indoctrinated within their schools. They're starting to even change their parents' minds because their parents don't want to get shouted down, right? So absolutely, we should. I believe first we need to reintroduce civics into the classroom, because it's in our schools in California, it's virtually eliminated, which is scary. And
Mhm.
I would go as early as elementary school. I know you're saying middle school, but I think elementary school is right when you start seeing the indoctrination.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about for our specific curriculum. Maybe we'll expand out. I mean, I have something in mind once this is rolled out in 5 or 10 years. Maybe we'll expand out in elementary school. Maybe we could expand down, actually, just make it where it was a little bit simpler and expand down. I don't know. I actually haven't even thought about that. We need to do middle and high school first. But absolutely, elementary is definitely something to think about. But it starts with education. It starts with our next generation, and I believe it'll just filter down from there. And we can do better for them. I mean, education has been lacking. We've been falling for a long time, and it's been a bottomless pit. I just had this really big and knowledgeable federal and state education person on. It's actually episode 85. It's the one. It's the one that's out right now, and she was talking about, heck, we gave $190 billion during the COVID era, and we don't have one measurable thing. I mean, there's nothing to measure, and they're still saying we need more. Not thank you. And it's like there's nothing to measure. I had the guy on that's news anchor. He wrote that book, The Fear Factory. He's doing that Baltimore schools thing. Actually, I think Trump recognized him for the Baltimore schools thing. They went up 40% in the budget. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount, billions and billions, and I think after going up 40%. That there was no measurable there, or maybe it even went down. It was something crazy because they were hiring all administrators and not teachers and spending it on the kids. And I'm like, well, until we start putting the kids up here, it's gonna fail. We have to put the kids at the top. So
Absolutely, absolutely. That construct of spending more and doing less is not lacking in California. Just the homeless alone, they've doubled the amount they spend on homeless, and homelessness has increased by 50%. Go figure. Because the money's stolen. I mean, and that's the other thing. Politicians need to just be honest. The money is stolen, and they are not even speaking the truth. They try to couch it in all
yeah, but
these
I mean,
words
don't
and
you think
phrases.
part of that, part of it is because the media, when they betray it and they spin it, if a politician tries to speak the truth, the way the media spins it to the people is they've done something wrong. And when they should be embraced for doing that. Hey, they're a regular person and they're telling us the truth. I mean, we shouldn't expect them to be like this polished. Nobody's perfect. We're all humans. I'd rather a politician do a truth test and tell me everything up front, get the skeletons out, and let me vote for who's best qualified. The merit-based system. Anyway, Lewis, is there
Yep.
anything that you want to tell? I would just say the American people, but we have an audience base, just the podcast part, in 167 countries. So is there anything you want to tell the world, Lewis?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have volunteers and donors all over the world. That's the one thing I think California created in order to steal elections, but it actually works to our advantage. But I I I I really want people to know, this is definitely my opinion. I believe we're in divine times right now. I really do. And I think, and I'm not talking about specific religion, but I think we need to bring God back into the picture 100%, and understand that I believe he's already won what I call a spiritual war, but we the people need to do the work, and if we're going to reap the harvest. And if we are all sitting on the couch and complaining, at the end of the day, we're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I've been begging people, and saying, come on, people, we need to stand up and make a difference. And I was going to say the same thing here is, if you see something wrong, you need to step up and do it. And we have to understand, and you mentioned Rome. Rome conquered because they were so good at bread and circus, right? That was part of the Roman Empire. Everybody would have food, and then they would have all these games and people to keep people entertained. Well, we deal with the same thing. There's not very many people in the United States that are actually starving. That's a myth. And almost everybody has circus in the form of their phone right here. That's circus. If we can set that phone down for a minute, re-engage with our neighbors, re-engage with family, and use AI for a benevolent reason, it's amazing what we're going to be able to accomplish. But we have to take a deep breath and realize that there's a control mechanism here. And in order to break out of the matrix, you have to see the matrix.
Cool. Lewis, I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation, especially being willing to go deeper on the how, not just the what. And I think that's what we're looking for right now. Not just frustration, but clarity, not just problems, but pathways. As always, this is about helping people. It's about helping them understand what's actually happening, what can be done, and where they fit into that process. Patriot Party. And as always, remember, patriotism isn't partisan, it's patriotic.